Hey everyone, welcome to Popcorn for Dinner podcast, and we are here to talk Loki season two. We missed the first week, but we're back and we're going to talk about the first two episodes. I should mention if you're joining us for the first time, we do podcasts on all sorts of shows. Currently, we've got Gen V episodes going on. We've got episodes of Sex Education, the final season of Top Boy as well. Winning Time, unfortunately, got cancelled, and the Continental. And yeah, we are excited to talk to you about Loki. Joining me, um, we've got Fat Four from the Sons of Mjolnir podcast, and we've got Jeremiah, who's a returning guest to Popcorn for Dinner as well. And yeah, long-time listeners will probably realize I've got a promotion because I have been hustling as a guest host for months on this podcast, and behold, I am now hosting a podcast. But yeah, so please, give this the best ratings ever so I can keep coming on and you can keep hearing my voice. But yeah, cool. So I mentioned my two guests. So I want to go to them now. So first, Jeremiah, welcome. How are you doing? What do you think about Loki so far?
I'm good. Thanks for the intro. It's great to be back on the podcast to talk about Loki and us and people like me who have done some terrible, awful things like convincing Banky to cover Loki season two. Um, yeah, I'm just excited to talk about it.
Nice, nice, nice. We're not gonna ask what terrible things you did, but at least we're on air now. And yeah, we've got for the first time on the podcast, we've got Fat Four here. He's also the comic editor from Streamer, if you know him from that. Welcome. How you feeling? What have you got to say about Loki?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited. Like I told you all in the chat, any opportunity to talk about Loki, I'm there. So, like you said, thank you so much for having me. But I'm feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. I'm excited to talk about this new episode and last week's episode. I love this Loki era that we're living in, man. I love it. So, I'm excited.
Amazing, amazing. Honestly, like I'm glad you said that because for me, Loki's my favorite Marvel Disney Plus show. I think
Mhm.
anyone who listened to our season one episodes probably just heard me gush about so many different things and stuff. So I'm really, really excited that we're getting to do this. Um, so yeah, so what we're gonna do, we're not just gonna start going through all of episode one and all of that again. So we're gonna go through episode two, and obviously things from episode one will come up, and we'll talk about them as we go on. So obviously, I want to start like chronologically. Um, let's start with that opening sequence. Just pretty much from the start to the title card. I guess you can call it a cold open, even though it was kind of long. What did you guys think about that? Start with Fat Four.
I thought it was awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. I love when we get to any opportunity to get Mobius and Loki going on like a little adventure together. I am all for it. But I thought it was really cool. First of all, when they're walking up to the theater, we see a Kingo poster from the Eternals, which I thought was really cool. Just like
Nice.
another little reminder that they're still out there, and also in the comics, as Guardians and Eternals have a very long history together, and also we know in the MCU that they know each other. So I thought that
Mhm.
was just really cool, like a fun nod. But one thing I really love about the scene altogether is Brad Wolf, the guy who plays him.
Yep.
What is his name? I had it written down. Raphael
Raphael.
Casal, I think, something
Yeah, yeah,
along those
that's it.
lines.
Yeah,
Man, he is great. Like he is, don't get me wrong, he's an asshole, but he's very charismatic about it. Like I
Yep.
really liked his introduction when he's like talking to all the movie people and he's like, "Ah, come on, what do you mean? I'm on a date here." Like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought that was awesome.
Oh no, no, I really, really enjoyed that sequence, and it's good you shouted out Rafael Casal because I didn't quite like him in the first episode. I just kind of
really.
felt like I don't know, I just got a weird kind of one note vibe from him. I was
Hmm.
like, and if you're a Karate Kid or Cobra Kai fan, he does the what's it called, the thing that Cobra Kai always do, like the kind of villainous holding of the gi, and I was like, oh, he's copying, he's copying that, and I was like, what is going to be his role? But then this episode is just such a 180, and I'm like, okay, this is It's got so much energy, and yeah, no, I'm glad you shouted him out, and yeah, I really enjoyed him. Jeremiah, what do you think?
Yeah, same. I thought it was awesome. I had like I think that scene, you know that scene where Loki's doing the shadow play, and you're like, okay, so Loki's finally he's outside of the TVA, and he's finally getting another opportunity to use his magic, and then we get like so many throwbacks to the character he's been. I loved
Mhm.
seeing that, getting that whole adventure, like him and Mobius are hunting someone together. Like, I mean, to a certain extent, to go with the DC show, it was kind of giving Legends of Tomorrow just a little bit. And
Mhm.
listen, I like that show too. So
Yeah.
especially with the whole time travel shenanigans. And I think this is one of the first times we're having extended periods of time on the
Mhm.
sacred timeline on Earth. So it was cool to see that as well because a lot of season one was, yes, it was on the like we had them on the timeline, but it would be in like different planets, which is great to see as well. But like it was just like a different direction in terms of where the shenanigans for the season would be taking place. So I was excited for that, and I was excited to just see classic throwbacks to Loki as a character as well. So yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, like I'm always here for any love for Legends of Tomorrow. I feel like very underappreciated show. It did go off the rails at times,
Honestly.
but it was quite good. But that's for DC. But yeah, no, like you mentioned, it was really great to see Loki's powers. I think that's one of the things from season one that I know people complained about. I was fine with it, but people complained
Mm,
in season one was like it wasn't really, there wasn't a lot of Loki. Like you could have swapped Loki out for almost any character. Like you didn't see his abilities and things like that. And I thought it was cool as well because it was a very kind of suave, setting. How they were dressed and stuff. And for once, you could see that Loki kind of enjoyed being the muscle. If you think about it, he's always behind someone bigger. If it's behind Thanos and the Chitari and stuff, or when he's with Thor and stuff. But for once, he's the kind of enforcer, and Mobius is the one kind of behind him, and you could kind of tell like Tom Hiddleston was enjoying himself, and I think when an actor is enjoying himself, it always kind of comes through. Um, so yeah, no, I really really enjoyed that opening sequence, and playing around with the powers and old school, I guess old school Hollywood, so to speak, as well.
mm-hmm.
Um, I did want to quickly shout out an Easter egg. Obviously, Brad Wolf stars in the movie Zaniac. I had a feeling there was something there, so I looked it up before coming on. Zaniac is a Thor villain from like a very obscure, I think, one issue comic.
Yeah, Thor
Um,
319 from Walt Simonson.
and that's why we've got you on the pod.
I
I can only shine a
got you,
light on
man. I
things I
got
can't.
you.
I can only shine a light on things I can't take it all the way. So it's a great one for teamwork. So no, that was really for me a really great way to um, open the episode. But then getting into the meat of the episode, I think what's one thing that's really really working for me, right, is that we're almost so whilst we're advancing, there's like a big plot in the background, right, which I think has to do with the sort of time loop and you know, explosions and everything. But then each episode also has like a little sort of like, plot as well or like mission. So it feels like we are achieving stuff, but then, there's something big still coming. So
Mhm.
Mm.
how do you guys kind of feel about that in terms of a structure of like there's kind of an impending doomsday, but we've got almost kind of like a video game. We've got these little side missions we're doing till we can get to it. Jeremiah, what do you think about that?
For me,
Yeah, I was just like, what
oh
do you think about like how the season is kind of set up at the moment, where it's
yeah,
like, you know,
I was actually
little
thinking
small
of.
things.
Sorry, I was actually thinking about this in the shower like not too long ago. It was like I had mixed feelings about that specific feeling.
Hmm.
One, I like the narrative structure in terms of like, okay, like there's this big issue. Like literally, there's a point where Loki literally says, I was time slipping, and now I have time to deal with this. And it's kind of like playing on what you're saying. This idea that we're solving the small things first, but the big one is growing. And for me, it's like I had the opportunity to get some answers from this episode, but I still have so
Hmm.
many questions, which I guess is the thing with any show that makes you be patient and wait 1 week instead of dropping everything all at once.
Hmm.
Is I kind of have to wait to see. whether those things would be. For example, Sylvie is all the way in Broxton, Oklahoma. Why
Hmm.
there and why
On
not?
a branch
You know,
timeline.
yeah, of course,
Mhm.
but why there and why not? She's Asgardian, so why not somewhere in Asgard? Why has she decided that this McDonald's is the simple place that she wants to be in? What was going on at the end of time? What was General Dox's actual plan? Because fair enough, we see what she was doing, we don't really get the why, and it's those kinds of things. On we advance a lot, as in we see certain things that certain questions that were asked within this episode answered within this episode, but then in terms of like the larger scale of where the season is going, we still don't have
Hmm.
enough information, which is the frustrating part for me. But I still like I'm still comfortably on the side of I like this. I like where this is going.
Okay. I'll just for ticking boxes sake. So you mentioned like not knowing why she was there. I hope you didn't miss the post credit scene in the first episode.
I mean that as in the one where what's it called? Where Sylvie first goes and tries to order from
Yeah, yeah.
McDonald's.
Okay, okay,
Yeah, yeah,
cool.
yeah, I
Yeah,
saw
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, no, but what I
Um,
mean is like we know what's going on there, but like why has she made that decision to do what
mhm,
she's going to do? Like is this because she just feels like this is all I've ever known and we're just gonna
mhm,
keep pruning because we're gonna keep pruning? Or is it she actually has some relationship to He Who Remains as well? And it's like she's also scared of what he's warned about and she's like, this is the best way to
mhm.
do. I don't know. Like I wanna know what her motivations are as well.
Mhm.
No, that's interesting. That's interesting. Fat Four, what do you think about that?
Well, so I got a couple things here. If you don't mind me nerding out on you for a
Yeah,
second,
go on, go on, go on.
but
Floor's
I
yours.
wanted to go back really quickly to what you were saying with the Zaniac, and I think it
Yeah.
relates to Jeremiah, what you're talking about with Broxton, Oklahoma. So coming from the comic side of it, especially from like the Thor mythos of it, like you were saying, the Zaniac is from or from a Thor book, but the TVA is as well. The TVA was
Hmm.
actually their first appearance was a couple issues after that Zaniac issue we're just talking about.
Ah,
And
okay.
then relating it back to the Broxton, Oklahoma, that is actually a very important place in the Thor comic book world. And while it's different in the MCU, in the comics, that's where Thor creates new Asgard. So while in the MCU we have the new Asgard in Tornsburg, Norway, in the
Yeah.
comics that's in Oklahoma. So to me, I mean, this is just my own opinion on it, but I feel like the reason why they chose Oklahoma specifically and the reason why they
Mm-hmm.
chose Zaniac specifically, to me, I feel like it's just very subtle nods and kind of pushing
Hmm.
us in the direction of we're going to eventually get that Thor and Loki reunion that I want to say it was one of the producers, Eric Wright. He just came out recently saying how that reunion of them is like kind of one of the goals of the series, not
All
necessarily
right.
this season, but like the series as
Hmm.
a whole. So to me, I feel like they're purposely kind of using these Thor kind of little Easter eggs and nods to subtly remind us, like, hey, remember Loki's Thor's brother? And I feel
Mm.
like we're going to be getting a lot more kind of Asgardian and or North mythology kind of nods to remind us of that. So that's what I would just say about like Sylvie being in Oklahoma and stuff like that. But as far as the structure of the show goes, I'm enjoying it, but I will say I think episode 1 was better, at least in my opinion. I think that
Right.
episode 2 was very much plot driven, and it's like
Hmm.
in my opinion it just seemed like episode 1 was kind of like an information dump. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, here's the temporal loom, here's time slipping, here's all this information. And then it's like,
Hmm.
okay, now that you know all of that, now let's get the story moving. And then that's why this episode deals with, finding Sylvie and interrogating Brad. It's a lot more kind of getting the plot moving, which I'm not
Hmm.
mad at. I love that. It's what's needed to go forward. But like I said, I just from being a fan, I don't know. I would say, like I said, episode 1, I kind of enjoyed a little better just for the action of it, the kind of like high stakes.
Okay, cool, cool. No, so I think so. First of all, the first point you made about like sort of bringing back the idea that Loki is Thor's brother. is important because, thinking back to season one, like we got Frog for example, that was like a
Mm-hmm.
little nice shout out of like, that's still there. And, even in this episode, we talk about their mother, um,
Oh,
and
that
there's a
was.
lot of like, it was gut wrenching, yeah, but like there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like references to Loki's history, which we should probably get into because, again, sort of how the plot goes. They capture Brad. They need to sort of find information about him to know what Docs is up to. Again, seeing Docs, I think she's played by Kate Dickey. I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
just always think of her from Game of Thrones.
I would say shout out Liza Aaron, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just
Yeah.
always think Liza Aaron. I'm like, it's so
Mm-hmm.
weird seeing her with like armor and stuff. I'm like, you should be by the big hole waiting for Littlefinger or whatever. But so yeah, so we're trying to figure out what they're doing, and X5 is kind of like our biggest lead, and that brings us to right. We've got to interrogate him, and we have the first interrogation where I think I'm gonna forget his name again, but Rafael Casal, I think he just blows it. He just hits it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
Um, with his interactions with Mobius, his interactions with Loki, I think it was just a really really nice sequence, and it's the kind of thing like if he was putting together his acting reel, like to get another role, I think this has to be on top of it. What do you guys think, Fat Four? What do you think about that whole interrogation sequence and everything?
I mean, I exactly what you just said. I loved it. I thought it was really great. It really X5, Rafael Casal, he was really great in that scene, and I loved how he was like probing Loki, because one thing I feel like some people forget is this is not the Loki that went through his kind of hero journey
Hmm.
within, Thor
Mm,
Ragnarok and Infinity War, which don't get
Yeah.
me wrong, he went through an amazing character arc in the first season. But
Hmm.
he's still very fresh from being the dude who took over New York, right?
Yeah.
So I liked the acknowledgement of that when him and Mobius are kind of having that discussion, but I thought it was very interesting seeing Brad kind of probe Loki like that and seeing how he
Hmm.
responded to that. I thought that was super interesting, and I mean he was really going in on him. You mentioned it before, but he brought up his mom. I was like, oh shit, like we're talking about
Yeah.
moms now. I was like, he's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
like shit's about to get real. But what really surprised me, I think, of that whole interaction was it wasn't Loki that lost it. It was Mobius. And like
Hmm.
Mobius is a cool cucumber, my man. Like he's usually
Yeah.
chill. So the fact that Brad was able to really get under Mobius's skin, I thought was the coolest part of that whole scene and really kind of gave us a little bit more depth to Mobius.
Hmm.
Like he's not
yeah.
just the comic relief
Yeah.
character, which while he's hilarious. I love Mobius, but like I said, there's more to his character than that, and I thought that was a great example of that.
No, yeah, definitely. Jeremiah, I'm gonna go to you to talk about that scene. But one thing I want to also kind of put on is that do you think the whole thing escalated because Brad was kind of right? Like, does Loki make things
Oh,
worse?
100%. That's why it was so good, is because like he was getting in on him, but nothing that he said was necessarily not true. Like he says, you're the villain. Like that's what you're good at. You always are the villain. And whether you're talking of MCU Loki or even the comic book counterpart of Loki, that
Yeah.
is one of his major flaws. Is like even when he does do good, I mean, the god of mischief, it's in the name. There's always some kind of mischievous means behind it. So, like I said, that's what I thought made it why I said it was interesting to see how Loki reacted to that, because like I said, it's not like he's just talking shit. He, like I said, had very valid points.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like, I think it was just great to watch. And Jeremiah, I was gonna ask you that. Do you think like that kind of scene? Do you feel so? I think it kind of grounds Loki to some extent. Um, because I think on the surface of it, right, he's pretty much very insecure, and this guy's sort of preying on it. Do you feel like these kind of scenes are? What do you think about like having these kind of scenes with essentially a god? Are they really really trying to obviously keep us rooting for Loki? Is this whole still part of his redemption, or are they teasing that or I don't know, maybe is he going to slide back? What do you think is going on?
I don't know necessarily about slide back, but I think like if you take Loki as a person, god or not, um, even if he completely changes, the fact is he did some things. He's capable of doing certain things. And I mean, later on in the episode, we do see that he's able to channel that side of himself, even if the intention behind it is not necessarily mischievous. Well, it is still mischievous at the end of the day, but it's not like with evil intent or malicious intent. Let's put it that way. Um, I think scenes like that are interesting because, like you said, it grounds Loki. I think it grounds Mobius as well. Like, well, I don't know if grounds is the word I'm using for the point I'm about to make, but it kind of puts into perspective the mental state of all the characters that we're watching at the moment. Because you will see Loki as someone who is, for all intents and purposes, you could say he's now making that journey towards being a good person. Some people might argue he already is a good person, but at the end of the day, some people could argue that he's actually still just doing what Loki does, which is survive. Because right now he knows that there's this whole multiversal war coming on, and that's why he's trying to get on top of things. It's not necessarily out of altruism for the universe or for the multiverse, but to some other people, it's like, no, Loki is the guy now trying to take care of the multiverse. And in that scene, it's like it's kind of like a litmus test for Brad, but also for the viewer to see where Loki is on that journey. So Loki is able to like, for one, he doesn't lose his shit, right? But at the
Hmm.
same time, he's still able to say, you know what, actually, yes, you're right. I can admit, and that's a big thing for anyone. It's having that accountability when you realize you've been a terrible person in certain ways, being able to actually recognize that that is true. Because sometimes people have this thing where they're like, okay, but I'm a good person now, and maybe they think that somehow blots out the things they've done in the past. The next step of growth is usually accepting that you did the things you did and then trying
Hmm.
to make amends if that's what you're going to want to do. And in this case, Loki is able to accept that and not let it get to him, while at the same time still able to use the fact that Brad is expecting him to still be that person against Brad, if that makes sense. And then from the Mobius side of things, another reason I love, well, I'm kind of going into the next scene where Mobius kind of
Yeah, go
experiences
on.
this
Yeah,
outbreak,
yeah.
but I loved the idea that the whole realization that all the TVA agents are variants is not just some glass breaking moment where they're like, oh shit, they lied to us, and they just continue. Like they are
Hmm.
internally conflicted. And when you said this adds depth to Mobius, I think it absolutely does. And it adds to every single agent at the TVA as well, coming to that realization that, okay, I did have a life on the timeline somewhere. And we saw that
Hmm.
again at the end of the episode as well, like when things actually happened, and you can see how everyone's reacting to the gravity of what's just happened, which is very different to how the TVA used to treat things in the past. Like entire universes, and that's not just planet Earth or planet Elementus, or what, the entire universes are constantly wiped out because of
Hmm.
their jobs. And they are probably from a universe that has also been wiped out because they are variants that come into
Yeah.
terms with that. And also even seeing Brad, like Brad actually questions him, because when you see Brad in episode one, that's episode one, in episode two, at the start of this episode, you're thinking he's really seeming to revel in his current life. Would
Hmm.
other TVA agents do the same? Would Mobius do the same? And then Mobius kind of gives you that answer where he's even scared that what if he likes it? Like, it's just interesting to know what characters would be going through in that kind of state. Like, when you realize something so existential like that, it can break you. And sometimes the best thing you can actually do is just keep going forward in what you already know before you can actually have time to process it. And it's good to see that that's something that the TVA agents are already going through, because the only characters we've seen go through it before now, actually the only character was B-15, but now through
Hmm.
Brad and Mobius we know that every single one of them is going through
Yeah.
it.
Mhm.
That like that's some really really strong stuff. Especially when you mention like the kind of mental state everyone is in. It's like the whole kind of theme of this show for me has all been around: is the future written or is it not? I feel like the TVA was happy doing despicable things because it's like it's written, it has to happen like this, so it's
Mhm.
fine. But I think when you drop free will on people, you get so much variety, like I said, for lack of a better term, like X5 came off as a prick in episode 1, but in episode 2 we see that he's pretty happy being um a Hollywood, I don't know, superstar. I don't know, they didn't make it clear, but at least people wanted his autograph.
Yeah.
So you get to see
Well,
that, and it's like free will. Free will can just be. It doesn't have to be like, forget about the establishment. Like, Mobius kind of wants to use his free will almost to stay and like
Hmm.
kind of keep a hold of what things used to be. And it's just fascinating and very textured. And coming back to when we talked about Sylvie as well, of like maybe that's why she just went to Oklahoma. And it's just like, for once, I'm not running away from TVA agents trying to prune me, since they've been trying to do since I was like 5, because I ended up being, I don't know, born female rather than male, or whatever a crime actually was. Um, and it's like, this is a chance to actually just experience life, kind of. It's interesting because you mentioned the parallels to Thor, kind of like in the first Thor movie when obviously he's banished from Asgard, but he just kind of gets to live out life for a little bit. So it's quite interesting seeing like how all these characters are dealing with this stuff, and it's yeah, no, it's fascinating, and I really like how the show is written to give you those kind of textured discussions and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, so moving on from that, so that was
Well,
the first interrogation. Oh,
can
sorry,
I
go
say
on.
something real quick? I just
Yeah, yeah, go on,
I had a thought I wanted to run off of what you guys just said, because
go on, dude.
both both amazing points. I agree with both of you 100%, and I think to your point, I think a lot of this season does deal with that kind of ethical question of, like you said, free will and what is better. I think in Sylvie's position, the way she's coming at it is, like I said, is it better to have free will and be able to make your own choices, even if those choices are bad? Like those
mm,
it doesn't have to be all good choices. Those choices could be
Yeah.
bad, but I think it's the fact that you are able to make that choice. And for He Who Remains, or other people in the TVA, it's, well, we could live maybe a more comfortable life, but everything is controlled and everything
Hmm.
is already pre-planned. So I think it's more of just kind of a basic ethical question. I don't think there's really a right or wrong answer. It's all about your perspective. And I think it all
Hmm.
comes back around to what Jeremiah was saying about, Mobius, and how we're seeing the other TVA agents and how they're reacting to this. I would say I think another big theme of this series is consequences, especially this season.
Hmm.
And we're
mm,
seeing all of our characters dealing with the consequences from season 1 and like how they respond to that. So for Mobius, it's to completely avoid it. Like he's like, I like my life. I don't like I all this stuff is too big for me, so I'm just going to stick to what I know. But then we have characters like B15 who are actively pursuing that and are actively, like, for her, she's trying to come at it from like a structural standpoint and change the TVA itself. But for Brad Wolf, he wants to just live his life on the timeline. And like that's how he's dealing with the consequence of learning what the TVA is. And I think that we could even apply that to General Docs as well. Her way of dealing with finding out the TVA is not what it is similar to Mobius. She wants to avoid it. And it's like, I think she says in the first episode, while the timekeepers might not be real, their message was real. So for
mm.
her, it doesn't matter that it's a lie. It doesn't matter that the timekeepers maybe weren't real. What they're supposed to do in her mind is still the right thing. So like I said, I just wanted to I thought you guys had really great points, and I just
Nah,
wanted to add that onto it.
no, honestly, like, yeah, it's such a like it's something you can talk about for ages, because
Hmm.
you can almost even kind of relate it to the sort of military aspect, right? Of like they were very happy just following orders, right?
Hmm.
But now they've got agency to say, hang on a minute, we're actually killing people,
Yeah.
um, which is a very, very textured thing to get into. But, you know, that's the thing. When comic books are good, comic book media is good, it touches on this stuff. Like at the end of the day, almost all the time, it's like a metaphor for this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so it's great that, it's almost, I guess, what's the old adage, having steak in your vegetables. Like you have all the great action and fancy powers and stuff, but underneath there's a lot of like really good messages and stuff
Mm-hmm.
to take forward. So let me see where we are on the plot. So yeah, so they eventually do the second interrogation with Mr. Wolf. Um, what did we think about that? Jeremiah, you want to go
Loved it.
first?
Sure. Again, throwing back to another throwback to Loki's character, how far he's
Hmm.
come, but also how not long ago that was. We see Loki taking some pleasure in the game the game he's about to play with Brad. And I'll say they almost had me going on the Mobius part of it. Like we all knew deep down that Mobius was in on it, but it's like how they got Brad, so it's like
Hmm.
how committed would they be? Like, I wonder if there are actually people watching this who thought, what if Mobius actually didn't know this part of the plan? I don't think so, but who knows? I think I love that scene just because again it was an opportunity for Tom Hiddleston to just have fun with and him and
Yeah.
Brad. They were just like they were going off. Raphael, they were just going off each other. The back and forth was beautiful to see, and then like he's bringing this whole idea of, okay, I said some mean things, like, all that.
I'm sorry I brought up your mom.
No hard feelings,
Right,
dude.
right. But all of that, and then Loki himself too is all like, yeah, like I have done some terrible things. He's like really embracing that in a very mischievous way, just not malicious this time. And again, another opportunity for us. We had fun watching this. We can laugh about certain things, but it still allowed us to move the plot forward in
Hmm.
we start to know he actually does know where. Because at this point, I'm like, why are you guys so sure he knows where Sylvie is? But he actually does know where Sylvie is, which also still brings more questions as well for Brad. Like, was he comfortable? Just was he actually stalling, or did he actually abandon Doc's plan? Things like that. Like, but in that scene, in that moment, I was just enjoying watching Loki get down to business because, like you were saying, that's probably what people wanted to see more of in
Yeah.
season one, where it was Loki kind of figuring out stuff. Now it's Loki doing stuff.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think, like you said, I need to shout out the director of this episode. I think it's Dan DeLu. And what you said captured the perfection, I think, of the directing there because it's like the beauty of that scene is that it went on long enough for you to actually, or at least I think, for you to kind of ask yourself the question, like, has Loki actually just gone rogue? You know, if that wasn't well directed, you just kind of tick a box. Yeah, it was just a plan, and but it was set up in such a way that you actually ask yourself that question. It might just be 1% of doubt, but that just kind of makes the experience a
Mm.
lot better anyway. So definitely shout out to Dan for that. And then, sorry, before I come to you for, I'm gonna just kind of move along a little bit. So we get actually also shout out to the visual effects team as well, like him getting squashed in there, like yeah, I don't know, it made me claustrophobic. Like, it was just like I do not want to be in that. Like I'll definitely spill the beans on whatever I know. Um, but yeah, Jeremiah brought a point up there, right? So we get to find out that Brad found Sylvie, but he just went off to be Brad Wolf, the star. We've been talking a lot about like people's mental places and dealing with free will and stuff. What do you think happened there? I think there's clearly some things happened there that maybe I don't know. Maybe he's seen her working at McDonald's and was like, I can give this a try. What do you think's happened there, Fafo?
I think you just said it exactly. I think that well, Mobius in this episode, he says what Jeremiah was saying, how they figure out that he knows where she is. Mobius says like X5 is a really good hunter. Like he's really good at his job. So there's no way, like if he went looking for Sylvie, he found her. So that's like why they went on that assumption. So like I said, exactly what you said. I think that
True.
he found her. He saw that she was working at McDonald's and like she was living her life, and he was like, well, why can't I do that? And it's like, again, we're seeing how everyone is responding to I forget, Mobius said it best, but he said something along the lines of, imagine you just found out that all your gods are fake and like your entire existence is fake. And I think, again, we're seeing how everyone responds to that. And for X5 slash Brad Wolf, he sees, again, Sylvie just doing mundane things like working at McDonald's. I mean, maybe he saw her, rocking out in the car with to the stereo or something. I don't know. But he's like, yeah, why can't I do this? Like, why the hell not? So he, again, his way of dealing with that is, I'm going to go find my life. And I think he even says that in this episode to Mobius. He's like, go find your life. Like, I got mine, you go get yours. So it's like, I can't really blame him for that. And I think that that's a very valid response given what you just learned about your life. I mean, I think even Mobius says it in this episode when he's like, he's talking to Loki, and Loki's like, yeah, he just wants to go be Brad Wolf. And he's like, well, who wouldn't? And it's like, yeah, like, do I want to be this freaking time hunter agent, or do I want to go and be a freaking movie star? Like, I think that's pretty easy, what's it called, decision.
Yeah, I mean, like, think about it. When you figure out that the whole thing is done, like, what does the TVA pay?
Yeah.
What's the pension look like? Like,
Hmm. Yeah,
you start
exactly.
you start asking all these
Yeah.
questions, like,
And Brad
because
even basically says that in his interrogation. He's like, this is fake. This is all not real. Like, he's done with it. He's like, dude, I am out of here. This is not real anyway. So fuck it.
yeah, and I think also a subtle thing in the episode is he's probably been living that life as Brad Wolf for ages. And obviously the
True.
episode's way of
Mm.
showing us that is that his hair just grows like 2 feet in between two episodes, pretty much. So it's like definitely he's been out there for a while. Um, so no, so I think that's what happened. I think he's kind of almost been inspired by Sylvie
Hmm.
to go and try and check out his life. And again, it's how do these characters react to what's going on? And I think it's really really powerful stuff. So
I
we
do.
get. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. It's just one point. I don't know if I was going to bring this up later on because one thing I did have down on a note, and I guess now is a good time to segue to parts of
Yeah,
it,
go on.
was the idea that this season is still it's still doing some world or multiverse building for us. So
Hmm.
like you said, there was a lot of information dumped in the last one, but even in this episode, we're getting a lot of, I guess, elements of the nature of the TVA that aren't yet
Yeah,
explained, but we're seeing them and it's enough to ask questions. So, for example, Brad is a variant. Presumably,
yeah,
that means at some point in his life, he did something that he was not supposed to do. And instead of being pruned, he was taken to the TVA and he used his abilities to become a TVA agent. But now he
yeah,
returns to his life. And unlike when we saw Renslayer on the Sacred Timeline, where it was a past version of her, we're seeing a present version, or at least a present consciousness of Brad. So I'm like wondering what the physics is there.
So
Like,
no, no. So I think the one little tweak there is that we aren't seeing him go back to his life. He's just gone in
Yeah.
there and just decided on a specific. Like he might not even have
Hmm.
been born when where he was
mm,
Brad Wolf. He's just gone somewhere and it's like, right, I'm gonna just settle down here. Like he
Yeah.
could have been born in the 90s or
yeah,
whatever
but
later on.
whatever that means is so Brad. So if let's assume that's the case. So
Yeah.
Brad's done something, but that whatever he's done has not changed the sacred timeline. Does that mean that all of this was supposed to happen? Because one thing that we experienced in season one is being told that time works differently in the TVA, and some people understood
Hmm.
that to mean that the TVA exists somewhere outside of the timeline. But from episode one, we can
Yeah.
see Loki slipping through time within the TVA, which to me
Yeah. Which shows
implies
that's
that
a
the
lie.
TVA
Yeah.
itself is part of the timeline as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, does that mean that Brad acting the way he currently is and going back to 1977 and becoming Brad Wolf, presumably becoming Zaniac eventually, is all as things are supposed to be on the sacred timeline? That's another question that I have for the show as well that we probably
So
won't explore until like 4 or 5 or something
yeah.
like that.
So it comes back to the thing, right? Was it written? Like if it wasn't written, anything can happen and things change as we go along,
Mm.
right? And we need to remember that the sacred timeline, there's nothing like that. He's just literally just picked one timeline and I like this best. That's literally what's happened. Like it's
Yeah,
not
but
really
when they went to
superior
that
to any other
episode,
one.
they said, yeah, of course. But like when we went, the sacred timeline to them is their prime timeline that he will
Yeah,
remain.
yeah.
You know, the branch that everything is branching off from. But that timeline hasn't changed, or has it? Like they got a hit on a tempad, not a diversion, because obviously that's not the way. That's not what they're not looking for a branch anymore. They got a hit on his tempad, and they thought maybe Sylvie might be there.
Hmm.
Um, and then they went and they found him making changes, presumably, or existing in the consciousness of his old body, if that's what they want to do. I have no idea what it's going to be like. But it's just
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like there's a lot of questions that like you should be asking. They're being shown to you, like when
Hmm.
Ouroboros says time slipping is not possible in the TVA. They never actually explain why it's happening. They just solve it. But I
Hmm.
imagine at some point during the season we will still be exploring these kinds of things. That's just kind of what I wanted to bring up with this before we move
Nah,
on with this.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Fat Ford, you got anything to add on that?
Well, how much time you guys got? so so I could go on for a long time about this. I've been thinking about this for a while, but Jeremiah, I think I might have an answer for you. Okay, so
Okay.
I'll
Let's go.
let come down the rabbit hole with me, fellas. Let's
Do
try
we
and
need the
go through
whiteboard?
this. Yeah, I'll say, give me my sticky notes. Where's the whiteboard? But
Right.
okay, so we're talking about sacred timeline, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to
Yep.
what you're saying about Brad Wolf, I think that Emmanuel is on the money where he says that he just picked a timeline and just decided to create a life there. I don't think it was like he found his specific life. But what you're saying is 100% true. Like X5 is a variant, just like how all the other TVA agents are. So at one point, he did something to branch off of the sacred timeline, right? You following
Yep.
me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So here's where it all comes together, in my mind at least, is we know from episode 1 that the TVA has had their mind wiped multiple times.
Yep.
So, like with Mobius, Loki sees Mobius in the past, but he doesn't remember that. And not only that, but in the past, we see that there's Kang statues all over the place. But then in current
Yep.
TVA, no one knows who He Who Remains is. They think it's the
Yep.
Timekeepers. So we know that their minds have been wiped. So X5, the original Brad Wolf that, made the decision to make himself a variant, he does not remember that. To him, he's just always been a TVA agent. And to bring it all together with the time slipping and like you were talking about how the TVA sits outside of time. So I think that is true still. TVA does sit outside of time and is not in the sacred timeline. But
No, of course not.
by it being outside of time, it exists everywhere in time. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So going off of that, what we're talking about, this all comes together, and the reason why this is possible is because of the temporal loom of what we're introduced to in the first episode. So
Hmm.
the whole TVA is powered by the temporal loom. Now
Yep.
that the temporal loom is trying to get all of these branches weaved into the sacred timeline, it's overloading, which is causing the TVA power outages.
Yep.
So, where I'm coming from and what I'm saying is that since the time loom is being overloaded, basically time itself is starting to infiltrate the TVA, which is why there is
Right.
now a past TVA and there's a future TVA, where before there was no past or future, it just was the TVA,
Was.
right?
Right.
So
Okay.
now that everything is the temporal loom is being overloaded, all of that time that should be kept away is coming in, which is making Loki time slip back and forth. And that also is why he's able to affect things in the future, like the crack on the floor or
Hmm.
the when Mobius writes skin on the thing. Based off what we know in Endgame, that shouldn't be possible because if you
Yeah.
change something in the past, that creates a branch. But
Yeah.
now everything is a branch. There's branches
Mm.
everywhere. So time is just, like I said, it's not
It's
working as it
fractured.
should. So that's why I don't think it necessarily retcons anything for the rules that we've established. It's just that now the rules are out the fucking window. Like when Sylvie killed He Who Remains and that sacred timeline exploded, that caused the TVA's position outside of time to be compromised. I know that was a lot. Does that make sense to you?
No,
Does that
I
make
follow
No,
you.
sense?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
following
I
you
got
and I
you.
agree. Like, I don't think
I
I
think
was
that
even
makes sense.
thinking of it as like, oh, this is a plot hole or anything. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
confident that there would be an explanation. It was just, for me, it was just more something that was intriguing because I'm thinking there's no way this guy went and found, like, if he's a variant and there's another version of him on the Sacred Simon, there's no way he just went and is like, right, you're going to be in,
He
like,
killed him
time
and
jail.
took his
Or
spot.
did that to kill, like, they're not going to do that, right? I just wanted to know like what could be, but that's a possible explanation that could work. But I feel like in a sense, I'm more of the idea that the TVA has always experienced time in some version, not the same way we do
Mm,
when we're on the timeline. Because for
Mhm.
it to exist, like you said, it does have to exist somehow outside of the timeline, i.e., those realities that are affected by the temporal loom. But it
mhm.
also is powered by the temporal loom. So in some way, shape, or form, there has always been an existence of the TVA. But I'm not sure that, like, for example, He Who Remains creating the TVA and then like the stuff in the past existing is necessarily a sign that um like I feel like all those things did exist even at the time of season one. Like the mural, the statues behind the mural were always there, they were hidden, which means those things did happen. Um,
Mhm.
when the TV agents talk, they talk about how many centuries have passed, things like that. They say hundreds of years, so like they still have an experience of time passing. They still have an experience of using tempads to like go forward and backwards, but it's not quite the same experience as being bound within the 3D universe, being bound by
Mhm.
other forces other than time that would cause you to age and things like that. I think that's something, but I just wanted it's just an answer that I wanted in this episode. Is like, well, okay, what did you do to your prime version? Like,
Yeah,
why
it's
are you here?
complicated stuff, dude. It's complicated. Like you said, bring out the whiteboard. All jokes aside, dude, I was sitting here with no cards. I'm like looking up like time travel theory. Like it's
Mm,
complicating stuff here. Like,
That's it.
first.
Marvel's getting us into quantum physics.
Pretty
literally.
Um,
much, and I love that.
And I'll say too, just before we get off this topic, for anyone out there who maybe wants some more information about this, I'll urge you to go Google and look up what's called the Heart of Forever. So that is going to be something from the comics that Kang uses in his city Chronopolis, which
oh yeah,
works
Mm,
basically exactly the same as the temporal loom, and it seems like that's like the MCU version
the
of it.
kind of swap in. Yeah,
mm,
Exactly. So again, if anyone out there is curious for kind of more in depth of all that stuff, I'd say, like I said, look up the Heart of Forever.
fair enough.
nice. We're here giving you the comic book recommendations as well. So tune in for everything. So
Like I
cool.
said,
The
I could
next
go
thing.
on for hours about this stuff. So like I said, I'll let you all do your own research.
No, honestly, Banky should have known. He let me loose on a podcast about time travel. Like,
Ooh.
why would you give me that much power?
No one man should have that power. Right. Cool. So we basically get to one what I think is one of the key things. Like we obviously it's only been 2 episodes, but it's like it's kind of been the elephant in the room, right?
Mm,
Sylvie and Loki meeting each other again. And we get obviously Mobius's commentary to make it funny. But, they're meeting again. The last time they saw each other, they literally kissed, fought. Sylvie killed someone, kicked Loki out. It was a hell of a first date, I guess. And now they're getting to see each other
Explosive
after.
for sure.
So
well,
what do we think about them meeting each other again? The whole conversation, the energy. I wanna hear it all. Fat Four, you go first on this one.
All right. Well, I again really enjoyed it. No surprise there, but I thought it was really cool, and I just love seeing Loki and Sylvie interact with each other because I think and this is a credit to the writing of the show, is I really love how I mean, Mobius points this out. It's like fighting with yourself. And like the whole, I know some people have kind of weird feelings about like them being together, like from the first season,
Hmm.
but I really love that because again, it kind of goes back to that central theme of loving yourself and accepting yourself. And I love, like I said, when they get to interact, seeing the both similarities and differences between them, I think is what makes their interactions super compelling. And in this instance in particular, what I thought was really cool is, again, going back to the theme of consequences and seeing how everyone reacts to those consequences. For Loki, he's like freaking out. Like we see him in the first episode, he's freaking out. He's freaking out here. Like he does not know if the decision that they made in season 1 to kill He Who Remains was the right decision. And he is really struggling with that. And he's trying to figure out what to do about that. But for Sylvie, she's completely content with the decision that she made. She 100% believes that what she did was the right thing, and now she is 100% okay with living with those consequences. And she even says when Loki's like, well, what happens when He Who Remains comes back, when one of the variants comes back? She's like, I'll kill him. Okay, done. Like she is just 100% content doing, like I said, with what she did. And whether that's right or wrong, I don't really know. I think that's kind of the way you look at it. But I just thought it was really interesting again to see their different perspectives on what happened in season 1.
No, yeah,
Mm.
no, like it was such a loaded thing for them to be back together,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And yeah, Jeremiah, what do you think about it? You
I
give us your
I no, I
thoughts.
think you were spot on with that. That's what I was seeing as well. Because even when you earlier in the episode when you mentioned consequences, that was the first scene that popped up to my mind. It was because
Yeah.
one thing was, especially for someone who recently rewatched season 1. I think the 2 days before episode 1 drops, I rewatched season 1. I think
Good job.
I I think I may have underestimated just how betrayed Sylvie felt in the finale.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
as much as I knew that they were not on the same side of the decision, it's kind of easy, maybe because of how time has passed, to kind of
Yeah.
follow the characters in what they're doing now, completely
Hmm.
forgetting just how big it was for them to fight over something so existential.
And
And
how
so,
recent
see,
as well.
exactly, it's very recent, like, because Loki comes back, he's time slipping. As soon as he solves that, they need to find Sylvie because they know General Dox is planning something. All of this is happening very quickly. Um, so you're thinking, and which again is like how like I guess how recently or how quickly everything for the entire series has unfolded again, because
Hmm.
you know, Loki hadn't really been in the TVA for very long when he went off with Sylvie. And then they
Mm-hmm.
went through that whole adventure in different places and eventually Lamentus. But like all of this is a lot of emotions all at once, which is why I think Loki is probably still more in the survival mode than a full I'm now a hero type of thing. Um, but there, right there, we're seeing that yeah, Sylvie is still very upset, and she has a right to be. And Loki is still very scared of what that reaction will be because he knows how she would feel about being betrayed, because he knows how he feels about being betrayed. But he also feels like he was right in doubting. But there's nothing he can do about it now. He's like, okay, but something must have gone wrong because I saw a version of you in the future and you look desperate. So I need to know what's going on. It's for me it was just that those consequences. It was like wow, yes, like sparks are flying. Like we see the death we get with Mobius in the interrogation scene, like we're talking about, and then we see some more as well. Like it adds a little bit more to the fight that they were having. It wasn't just like a visually appealing fight for, or we have to have a fight of some sort in the finale. There was a lot going on for these two characters, and this kind of just emphasizes that.
Yeah. No, like you guys hit the nail on the head. I think it was just. I think first of all, like people that say why they're together and things like that. When I think about it, it's like since we've known Loki, he's been very insecure and he's always kind of thinking, I need to double cross someone before they double cross me or whatever. So for someone like that, he's also always struggled for approval, be it from Odin, be it from Thor, be it from Thanos. He's always wanted that. And there is, of course, it's not, if you're telling this as an inspirational thing, it's like, he gave himself, he had found self love within himself. But, obviously, with a sort of comic book magic dust on it, he did find self love in himself, but also in another person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's quite beautiful in that aspect of them as a couple. I think it kind of completes Loki's kind of arc in a way of like, yes, he only trusts himself, but he also kind of finally loves himself. And then also, like, in terms of the betrayal, like, again, you think about it, like, um, Sylvie spent, ages. We get a mention of it here, like she killed 400 TVA agents, but she spent ages running away from them, having to figure out she has to hide in sort of like disaster zones and stuff in
Mm-hmm.
time to escape them.
Mm.
All these things to find someone she kind of loves and trusts, only for them to then turn around and say, "Hang on, this thing that you hate that's made your whole life a living hell, they might actually be the good guys, and I'm gonna stick with them." Like it brings your whole world kind of crashing down.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those two things are quite probably the only two things I'll add in terms of like I think it really makes sense why they're kind of compelling as a couple, but also like that betrayal is pretty heavy, and it's a feeling that she obviously has to um work through. Um, so, what else did we have in the episode? We had the action scene to stop Docs and her rogue hunters. I think this was the weakest thing in the episode. Um,
Oh.
no, no,
That
because
was very Legends of Tomorrow. Just
no,
coming.
because like honestly, I love like anyone who's probably listened to me on this before. When we talked about like Falcon and the Winter Soldier and things like that, I really, really love my action scenes and my fight choreography and stuff like that. But with this, like we built up, they took so many weapons and we're gonna stop them. And we've got Mobius, Sylvie, and Loki, and it's like pure distraction. Honestly, I think it was over in like 2 minutes. And it was just like, I was like, is that it? Is there some other plan that I'm missing? What is going on? Um, but it just felt like, right, we're running out of time here. Wrap this up quickly. Um, and and let's just kind of put a bow on it, which is kind of part of what I'm saying, where it feels like every episode we're completing a mini mission. So here it's like, let's get rid of Docs and take that out. I will say, yes, they kind of pruned tons of timelines and stuff, which in a clever way, when you think about it, obviously now kind of buys them time with the temporal loop, because the problem was too many timelines. And that was
Mm-hmm.
why I think
Mm-hmm.
Obi mentioned there was only like 5 minutes. So probably now probably bought them enough time for the end of the season, breaking the fourth wall a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Bought him
like what
4
did you
more
guys think about
episodes.
yeah. So like what did you guys think about that whole wrap up? Am I being too harsh? What do you guys thought?
I think your criticism is actually very valid. Like, while I really enjoyed it, I think that like I said, I think you make really good points. It definitely was rushed a little bit, and I mean, I don't know. Again, that could just be my criticism because I'll take 20 minutes of them fighting. You know what I mean? Like, give me
Exactly.
all of it.
Exactly.
So maybe it's just like I just want more. But no, I
Yeah.
really liked it. I thought it was. I thought the choreography was really creative. Like how you have like
Mhm.
Loki blasting people through time doors and like using like the TVA technology in with Loki and Sylvie's magic. I thought was awesome. And I again just I mean any chance to see Loki or Sylvie use some magic, I am
Yeah.
100% there for. I that's the one thing that sucks about being in the TVA is they can't use magic. But the other thing that I'll just throw out there, just very quickly, I think it also goes back to what we were just talking about with Loki and Sylvie and kind of the similarities and differences between them. Because if you notice, Loki goes hand to hand and uses the
Yeah.
magic. I think he might grab one of the, I forget what they call them, the little like zap sticks,
Yeah.
but
The pruning stick, I
yeah,
think.
pruning stick, but Sylvie's strapped up with that sword. Like she's ready to go. She's ready for blood. So I thought it was interesting to see again that I thought that just kind of showed the differences between them and kind of like that's how old Loki would go about it, right? Like with his knives
Yeah.
and whatnot. But we've been talking about his kind of character progression and all that stuff. I think that's a good example of that because, like I said, where Loki is going hand to hand and more like disabling or putting them out, Sylvie is not afraid to use that sword for blood. Like she is ready to take them out permanently, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, like you said, it might just be that I wanted a bit more, but it just almost kind of felt like the action was secondary. Jeremiah, what do you think?
I think actually I'm gonna pick up on that last line you said. Like it felt like the action was secondary because I think it was, and I think it was supposed to be. I think we essentially just land on where Docs is, and
Hmm.
Docs sees us like right. Just prune as many as you can. Like they've caught us. There's nothing we can do. Right.
She's like, do it
Just
all,
do as
do it
many.
all.
Right. But that's why I'm questioning. Like, is that it with dogs? Like, is that where it ends? Like,
Mm.
is there a specific reason that they wanted to just bomb as many timelines as possible? Because that wouldn't actually stop more timelines. Are they just gonna keep like is she just gonna keep raiding the
I think that
armory
was the
and doing
idea.
more and
I think she
more?
wanted to keep the legacy of the timekeepers and
Yeah,
stuff.
but for how
Um,
sustainable would that have been? Because like literally at every
yeah,
second, everywhere, and new like 10 million new branches could be forming. For
yeah.
example, like it's not sustainable. Like there has to be, maybe there isn't. Maybe I'm overthinking this, but in my head, I was
Hmm.
thinking there has to be something more here, and it makes sense that we're not going to spend plenty of time fighting here because we're not ready to explore that yet. Because again, a lot of this season is giving us those small bits to bring characters to where they need to be, but ultimately the overall story is still kind of building in the background. Like we still don't know where Renslayer went, but now we know that there's a
Hmm.
hit on the Tempad. So is all of this again. At the end of season one, he remains said to Sylvie, see you again, which makes sense. Like, if all the timelines are going to be coming back and his timeline is still going to exist, a version of him will discover the multiverse in the future, and a version of him
Hmm.
technically does still exist. But also, it could just be a variant of him might discover, because now there'll be new branches. A variant of him might discover Alioth earlier. It could be like all of that is possible, but we don't have any of those answers just yet, which is why I didn't mind that that scene was very short. It didn't feel like it needed to
Yeah.
be an explain everything right now moment. You did mention something about this was you, Thor, actually mentioned something about uh buying more time, and I agree with that because throughout this whole bomb the thing, I was thinking, if Ouroboros knew that this was Doctor's plan, where would he stand? Because he's very stressed about the situation.
Mm-hmm.
He,
Mm.
we get the vibe that he's a nice guy, and he probably thinks, and you probably think he'll probably want to like support, because like his solution is not like right. This is overloading the time loom, so we need to start pruning branches. Like, okay, so we're not pruning branches, cool. So we need to fix the temporal loom. So he's trying to do that, but I'm pretty sure he would low key appreciate the time that he's just been bought, because right now they do need to find Miss Minutes or Renslayer and some version of He Who Remains, because they need to know how they can actually open up those blast doors again and
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
fix the
They
temporal
need
loom.
his temporal aura to do
Aura.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which is another concept again that we've been introduced to.
Hmm.
I think in some sense you might think it's very self-explanatory, but at the same time there might be more to it. Like it might be more useful than we think knowing that
Hmm.
concept. And it's just all those things. Like they're forcing me to be patient and also not theorize too much like we did with One Division a few years back. But
Oh
like,
God, Mephisto.
Mephisto, dude. That, that's
no,
Ouroboros is Mephisto. You heard it here first, folks.
Ralph Boner.
right? But yeah, it's just interesting, and I can I just say I love the addition of Obi as a character just in general. Like he's a breath of fresh
Yeah.
air
Dude,
every single time he's on the
I
screen.
will die for Ouroboros. I love OB. I 100% agree with you. I think that there's more to OB than meets the eye. But
Of course,
Yeah.
just from me, like I said, I love him and I love his character so much. I cannot bring myself to imagine it's nefarious. So like you were
Mhm.
saying, like, would he be for branching the timelines? Like, I think yes, because like from a technical standpoint. But I just like I can't believe that he would want that
Yeah, like
for like a bad reason, you know? Like I just love him
yeah.
so much.
He wrote the TVA guidebook, so that's something to say. Like he's pretty much employee of the year, employee of the of all time,
Of
pretty much.
eternity.
Like
I will say
so that's one
too.
thing to know.
I will say too about Ouroboros, which I think is super super interesting, and that I'll leave you guys with is in episode 1. I thought it was super. One of my co-hosts, Zen, who I did after show with. Shout out Zen, listen 3000. But we were talking about this, and he brought up how why is it OB can remember stuff from the past, but no other TVA agent can. And so, like,
So
go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, so I was gonna say with that, I was thinking about it, and it's like because I work in IT, right? It's a very stupid joke, right? Everyone forgets about IT. You're in the basement somewhere,
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they wipe everyone's brains and they forget he's down there, and I think
No,
that's literally the explanation.
and I like that. I get that, but the one thing I would push back on that though is so then why doesn't Mobius remember his conversation with Loki? So like Loki sees Mobius and B-15 in the past, and he's like, he who remains is coming, blah blah blah, and they're like, who the hell are
Oh
I
you,
no,
right?
think,
like their
So
I
why
brains have
think
wouldn't
been
he,
wiped
they?
in
yeah,
between.
I
Yeah,
You get
think
what
he
I
but
mean?
established that,
OB's
like,
hasn't
yeah,
because
I
if
think
Yeah,
that's
that's
what
what I'm
Emmanuel
saying.
was
Like,
saying.
yeah.
Like, they would
yeah,
wipe everyone in the TV
Oh,
because
so you're
even,
saying they forgot
yeah,
to
he
wipe his
comes down.
mind?
Yeah,
yeah, because it's
exactly.
literally all the way in the basement. They're like, oh, we forgot that department.
That's even better.
It's just like,
That's even
Yeah,
better. Sorry, I misunderstood at first, but
no. So yeah,
yeah,
that's what I was
I like
thinking.
that. I like that a
He's
lot.
just
That's
like
funny.
he's down there because he mentioned like Mobius is the only one who came to see him 400 years ago.
Yeah,
Like, so no one comes down there, so he
yeah.
doesn't get wiped.
yeah.
He's perfect.
And that's also
Um,
interesting because even the crack in the thing, like I didn't pick up on it until we mentioned that, yeah, like they've been wiping their memories. Is the idea, like that crack was there, and I'm thinking,
Mhm.
why doesn't he remember that Loki did the crack? And it's because of course his
yeah,
brain has been wiped after that.
and,
It's
and
just
and
like
Casey
it's
says
always
it. It's
been
like
there.
it's always
Mhm.
been there, exactly. So like that's all he remembers. But yeah, just to sort of wrap up. So we kind of get our overarching storyline going. The Loom, is about to go kaput. We need a temporal aura of He Who Remains, or with basically we need a some, I guess, his variant or something pruned, because I think that's how we got Loki's temporal aura. So
Mhm.
I imagine that kind of sets us up for the next episode as our little mini mission to find something like that. We got Renslayer coming back online. We did get the recording in episode 1 of He Who Remains and Renslayer kind of teasing they're working together. And then we're saying Miss Minutes was sending stuff to Renslayer. So it's almost like we've got our villainous trio there. So the pieces are kind of starting to come together, but then also I feel like there might be a twist. So in general,
Might.
I guess, I mean, you never know. Sometimes it could be a rough boner. There's no
Yeah.
rules to a twist. You just take what you get sometimes. So I was just gonna say, just to sort of wrap up, like, what are we thinking coming up? What are we looking forward to? Whose storyline are we kind of more interested in? What do we think about the plot so far? Just a few thoughts, and I guess we'll obviously revisit that as we chat more about the episodes to come. So Jeremiah, you want to go first?
I think everyone, like, I want to see where everyone goes from here. Like, I want to know more of Mobius and how he's dealing with things. I like the parting shots of Sylvie in the world that she's accepted as her own, but with the realization that it's fragile because at any moment there could be another dogs trying to bomb it all. And she has a tempad, well, not her, but he who remains tempad as well. Now it's like she was happy to be done. She had her Thanos moment where she sat down and she's just on her farm and she's like, right, I can retire now. And then people come back and she's like, fuck's sakes, like this is still going on. Like these fascists are still doing stuff. I still need to be fighting. So I want to see what she's doing because she's obviously taking an interest in where she is. Like she's asking that little boy mundane things about his life. Like, is your mom coming to get you? It's kind of like maybe she's afraid, like, damn, so you could literally just be going about your basic day and all of a sudden you're just gone. Like that
Hmm.
probably is a lot to her. Which is probably why she would definitely not just, like, we're not saying goodbye to, we all know we're not saying goodbye to Sylvie. She will probably be motivated to come back into this fight in some way. So I want to see how that happens. I want to see um I want to see Obi interact with more people in general. I just want to see Obi interact with everyone. Um,
He's fun,
I,
like that
honestly,
renaissance for Kehui Kwan is spectacular. Oscar winner
yeah,
Kehui Kwan now.
Hmm.
Yeah, more of him,
and
please.
I want to see what's going on with the larger characters that we haven't yet seen on screen, like
Hmm.
Renslayer. And as much as no need to talk about the actual actor, but like we we're expecting He Who Remains to still play a role in this season, as far as we all know. Like he probably still
Yeah,
appears at some point. So like I want to know what that character has been up to. Um, or what version of that character we're going to get, or how that character plays into this story. Because yeah, like essentially Renslayer was sent on some kind of mission. So have things already been put into, like, again, still coming back to this idea that all of this is still part of one big thing that was supposed to happen anyway. Is like, is that what we're going to see? Is everything still deterministic even when you have free will, or are we actually, really taking a bomb and saying, nope, there's no more sacred timeline? Because honestly, if there is no sacred timeline, what is the job of the TVA? Why are they still there?
exactly. Gonna be searching for purpose. Four, what do you think? How are you thinking about what's coming up?
Well, I first of all, I just want to say I want to agree with everything Jeremiah just said. I think those are all great points that I'm also super excited to get more into.
Exactly.
I'm also excited. I mean, like you said, man, Ouroboros, dude. I'm excited for more OB. I think that, like I said, there's a lot more to him than meets the eye. But also, too, something that we touched on, throughout this episode, I'm excited to just learn a little bit more about the TVA and like how it
Yeah.
all necessarily works, because we get pieces here and there. And I mean, we know from He Who Remains about, the multiversal war and this and that, but who knows how much of that was true? And it's like,
Hmm.
where not only how much of that was true, but I even from just like a technical standpoint, like where did all the materials to build the TVA come? Like, I mean, Kang is very powerful, but he can't just
Yeah.
make things out of thin air. So it's like, where did all this stuff come from? Where did, I don't know. I'm really interested to, like I said, get more into the whole lore of the TVA and this little pocket of the MCU that we're in. And yeah, again, going back to what Jeremiah said, I'm just excited to see where all these characters are, where they ended up, the ones that we haven't seen yet, and even the ones we have seen. Like going back to the whole consequences thing, I'm just excited to see how everyone reacts to what what has happened.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, I think I'm quite excited to see how things go with Loki. I'm still a bit nervous with this whole 6 episode format, but I think this is the only, Loki season 1 made the best use of it. Because sometimes I'm just worried that we're gonna have too much to wrap up. But,
Mm.
the creative team have my trust, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Finally, this is a little off topic now, but I just thought, since we're talking Marvel Disney Plus, I just wanted to quick thoughts from you guys on basically what's gone on with like Daredevil Born Again. For those who don't know, as a combination of like either due to quality control or things to do with the outcomes of the strikes. Basically, Daredevil Born Again, that had been filming for 6 months prior to the strikes, it's all been canned. All the writers and directors have kind of been let loose. Um, the report is that Marvel Disney is going to try and revamp what they do, how they produce television in Disney Plus. Um, and yeah, they're going to restart everything. I think Daredevil is kind of the main one that to talk about. Everything about people thought it was too boring. Apparently, he never suited up as Daredevil till episode 4. All sorts of things, and obviously, we saw what Secret Invasion was. So where are you guys on in terms of like this sort of revamp? Fat Four, go.
I I think it's a good thing. I think a lot of people are kind of making it bigger than it really is, in my opinion. I think, a lot of shows go through massive revamps, and to me, take as long as you need to make it right, to make it good, to
Hmm.
make it how it should be made. If that means completely wiping the slate and starting over, then by all means, wipe the slate. And I would also say, too, I think that if anything, these changes are going to make it closer to the Netflix series as opposed from
Hmm.
further away from it. I think a lot of people are jumping on this thinking like, oh, they're changing all this stuff. I think it's kind of the opposite. They're doing this to make
Yeah.
it closer to the Netflix stuff. That means Foggy. That means Karen. That means, Nelson Page and Murdoch law firm. All that stuff. I think just take a step back for a minute, let the writers and everything do their jobs, and then judge it when it comes out. That's what I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. Jeremiah, what do you think?
I agree with that sentiment. I think the show isn't out yet. It's still. I mean, I guess is it pre-production when they're already filming? Like it's still. It was
It's
filming.
production.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah,
so it's a
production.
production. It's sad in the sense that we now know as viewers we're gonna have to wait a little
Hmm.
longer, and we don't know what it means. It's sad for the people who previously put in their efforts to the show
Yeah.
that all that maybe there'll be stuff they can draw from it, but as of
Hmm.
now, everything they've done so far is just not going to amount to anything. That, in a sense, is sad, but that doesn't mean that it can't still be useful, and that
Hmm.
doesn't mean that the final product that does come out can't still be good. I
Mhm.
think I'm just gonna wait and see how that plays out because I have no idea how it will play out. I hope it plays out well, but yeah, I think that's just it. It's sad that we have to wait a bit longer, but ultimately, I don't think that necessarily means that it's going to be terrible. Like we can actually just like the one thing that makes this different from say the end of Game of Thrones is that has already been aired. We already know how bad
Hmm.
it was. We can't go back. Like I don't know. A part of me used to always think, what if they just like redo the last few seasons when he's done writing the books? But I don't think that will ever happen. People will never forget.
Hmm.
At this point, it hasn't happened yet, so we're never really gonna know until we do see what actually is released.
Yeah, absolutely. I echo you guys' sentiments. Like, you need to start, having again quality control. Like, make sure you're happy with what you're putting out. I'm very sick of when like studios or people or companies put out stuff where you can tell they don't even believe in it. I
Mm.
feel like you should make sure you're putting your best foot forward. Um, and in terms of like changing processes and stuff, do what you need to do. Do what you need to do to avoid getting into this point. With anything else. Like, you don't want to be 6 months into a project and say, right, let's scrap it. How you look at how you can change your process so you can do it sooner. If you want to go back to the old school stuff of doing a pilot and things like that, whatever works. But I think as a fan, you want it to go well. And like Jeremiah said, big shame to the people who are. I know, like, no one goes into this stuff and like, I'm gonna make crap on purpose. No, like, big shout out to them. They've put in their effort. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Hopefully, those guys can all go on and do greater and better things. And hopefully we also get a show that everyone is happy with. But I just thought it would be good for
Mhm.
us to just give quick thoughts on that again, since we're talking about Marvel Disney Plus.
One more
But
thought
yeah,
on
oh,
one
go
more
on.
thought on Marvel Disney Plus. I'm hoping to God, like as much as we don't always see retcons, I'm just hoping to God that we can just see a post credit scene where one of the bombs that Doc set off is in the timeline where the finale of Secret Invasion happened. Because you reminded me that that show exists. But it just needs to go.
Yeah, nah.
But yeah, that's just it.
I'm keeping that as my head canon because I don't think we should be revisiting that whole storyline anymore at all. Right, guys. Thanks for chatting with us on Loki season 2. Just to wrap up, like we said, it's popcorn for dinner on all platforms. We've got episodes of Gen V coming true. You should have one for the latest episode, pretty much right now, we had the final seasons of Sex Education and Top Boy, and also Winning Time, as well as the Continental for all of our John Wick fans. And yeah, check us out. Um, and I want to say a big thank you to my guests. I want to say thank you to Fat Four. Anything you want the people to check out from you. Go on. Anything
Yeah.
you want to check out? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm 1/3 of the hosts for a podcast called the Sons of Mjolnir. That's Mjolnir like Thor's hammer. We do comic book news, comic book reviews, interviews, all that kind of great stuff. And then you can also check me out over at The Streamer. That's STREAMR. And I'm the comic editor over there, so I do comic book reviews. I do breakdowns for Loki. And I mean, the site itself, we have reviews on all sorts of stuff: movies, TV, video games. So yeah, you can find me there. Find me on Twitter, the Fat Thor, and I'm always down to talk comics. Come find me.
Awesome. It was a pleasure having you on. And when you mentioned Sons of Mjolnir, I'm like, I hope no one listens to this and is like, I should start a Sons of Stormbreaker podcast or something.
That's funny.
But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
cool. Jeremiah, thank you so much. Anything you want to put out to the crowd?
I'll go with a mysterious stay tuned. I don't know. Just in case I ever actually do something that is worth plugging on the podcast. Stay tuned. But I will
Okay.
probably I'll be back on later episodes of this season as well. Probably all of them if Banky lets me, and as long as he doesn't get tired of me coming up with more time travel theories or whatever. But yeah.
Oh,
So yeah, I will
we're
see you
all
guys, or you will hear
we're
me
all
again
gonna
next week.
don't worry, we're all gonna get management's wrath for how long we've gone on this, but
But I mean, you could
it'll be
always
fun.
like hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, or any of all those things. Like if you wanted to talk Loki or you wanted to exchange theories or interact with, you hate something I said in the episode or I did a terrible, awful thing. Like you can just call me out on that or whatever. Like I don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, like guys, leave reviews, leave comments. We're gonna obviously tweet these out, put them on Instagram, reply with anything you think, share it with your friends who watch the show, use it to get your friends to watch the show and tell them that, if people are having these kind of conversations, then that means the show is good.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been a pleasure to be your host today, and hopefully we'll see you guys next week with the next episode. Thank you.
Yay.